This is the next video in my countdown to the end of the world. And I saw in a very far away site somebody accused me of being willing to lie about having seen reptilians. So I brought one, and he's a little too big for the camera, but he'll be standing here throughout this, making sure I don't spill the beans about them. This is his left wing, and the right wing is on a camera there. So tonight this will be about mind control. But I have an idea which I wanted to discuss, which is the people that rule the world have been using the Christians against the Muslim thing for the last since the Crusades, anyway. They've also been using the swine flu virus on arrowheads and using it on weapons. If you can get into a cut, someone will get very sick and maybe die. They've also been using the sheep Vishnu virus the whole time. And now they've upgraded to, they have the swine flu in injections that they poke into our children and mothers. And they've taken the sheep Vishnu virus. The problem with that is it excretes a neurotoxin which will kill you. And they've gone to just concentrating the neurotoxin and putting it into the chemtrails. So they haven't changed their methods. I don't know why they do that, but that's how they operate. I guess they're conservative. So what I'm thinking is, for a long time, someone has been pushing the Negroid population in the United States to be Muslim. And the first time that really bounced into the public was when Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali. But it's a long-range plot, and most of the Caucasian people are some kind of Christian. So again, we have Christians and Muslims. I think the setup in America is subliminal to get these two opposing groups. Supposedly the Negroid population has more guns than the Caucasians, and this frightened the Caucasians out of the cities into the suburbs. And I think the next stage was Obama and his hired governmental houses, a curse on both your houses, are very busy setting it up so the UN can come in here and take the guns away from the citizens in America. And why that would be necessary is perhaps a civil war between the Muslims and the Christians, the Negroid and the Caucasian peoples, sparked off by massive unfairness in the Middle East, which is the similar-ish kind of situation. The Caucasians in America are more or less committed to supporting Israel, and the Mohammedan followers would be, of course, prone to follow their own group. So this may be one of the setups that is event driven rather than time driven. However, on to the main presentation. I can find it here. Here it is. This is a book called Synthetic Telepathy and the Early Mind Wars. presented at the Consciousness Technologies Conference, July 19, 2001. So I'm going to read excerpts from this. Mind control is the big problem. That's probably how the takeover is actually going to be done, and the downside of this is you may never know. So there are words in here which I'm going to emphasize because these things that are just glossed over with phrases have great import on freedom. So quoting Richard Allen Miller. I first became aware of Alan Frey's work at Willow Grove in 1972, just after completing the Holographic Concept of Reality book. I was working with Dr. Carl Scheichter at the time and was asked about the significance of his work. Realizing its possible use in mind control, my first reaction was to go on red alert. Full significance was not yet understood at this time. Basically, Frey had discovered another sensory motor input in the higher blue band frequencies of 0.3 to 3 gigahertz at very low amplitudes of power. It was as if we had another type of vision but did not know how to see what was being received. It constituted the next generation of subliminal communications. The subliminal means below your awareness, which means mind control. My work at the time was involved with an artificial intelligence database for paranormal references. That's something that happens every day. I'm working with an artificial intelligence database for paranormal references called Project Paraphile. A second paper was also presented at the Omniversal Symposium, California State College at Sonoma, September 1973. This was titled Embryonic Holography and was an application of the holographic concept of reality model. It dealt with biogenesis and neurological regeneration and included speculation on the origins of cancer, faith healing, psychic surgery, and more technical aspects of mind-body energetics. 1 week after the delivery of that paper, 4 men came to my place of business, 2 in suits and 2 in full army dress. The 2 suits held me under close arrest while the 2 army personnel went through my files, pulling anything related to embryonic holography. The paper was rewritten from old notes and memory, but it was not the same. What got this paper classified as top secret for almost 20 years was that it was critical for the use of Alan Frey's study and its possible application to mind control. I was never able to draw what was so important in that initial paper until I began researching this paper more than 24 years later. I will discuss these aspects further into this document. In 1961, Alan Frey, a freelance biophysicist and engineering psychologist. What does that mean? Engineering psychologist. Reported that humans could hear microwaves. Most United States scientists dismissed this discovery as a result of outside noise. James C. Lynn offered a more technical description of the experiment. Frey found that human subjects exposed to 310 megahertz and 2982 megahertz microwaves at average power densities of 0.4 to 2 microwatts per centimeter squared, perceived auditory sensations described as buzzing or knocking sounds. The sensation occurred instantaneously at average incident power densities well below that necessary for known biological damage, and appeared to originate from within or near the back of the head. Pulsed microwave technology. Pulsed microwave voice-to-skull or other sound-to-skull transmission was discovered during World War II by radar technicians who found they could hear the buzz of the train of pulses being transmitted by radar equipment they were working on. This phenomenon has been studied extensively by Dr. Alan Frey at Willow Grove in 1965, whose work has been published in a number of reference books. What Dr. Frey found was that single pulses of microwave could be heard by some people as pops or clicks, while a train of uniform pulses could be heard as a buzz without the benefit of any type of receiver. Dr. Frey also found that a wide range of frequencies as low as 125 megahertz, which is well below microwave, worked for some combinations of pulse power and pulse width. Detailed, unclassified studies mapped out those frequencies and pulse characteristics which are optimum for generation of microwave hearing. Very significantly when discussing electronic mind control is the fact that the peak pulse power required is modest, something like 0.3 watts per square centimeter of skull surface, and that this power level is only applied or needed for a very small percentage of each pulse's cycle time. 0.3 watts per square meter is about what you get under a 250 watt heat lamp at a distance of 1 meter. It is not a lot of power. When you take into account that the pulse train is off, meaning no signal, for most of each cycle, the average power is so low as to be nearly undetectable. This is the concept of spike waves used in radar and other military forms of communication. Frequencies that act as voice-to-skull carriers are not single frequencies, as for example, TV or cell phone channels. Each sensitive frequency is actually a range or band of frequencies. A technology used to reduce both interference and detection is called spread spectrum. Spread spectrum signals usually have the carrier frequency hop around within the specified band. Unless the receiver knows this hop schedule in advance, like other forms of encryption, there is virtually no chance of receiving or detecting a coherent, readable signal. Spectrum analyzers used for detection are receivers with a screen. A spread spectrum signal received on a spectrum analyzer appears as just more static or noise. The actual method of the first successful unclassified voice-to-skull experiment was in 1974 by Dr. Joseph C. Sharp and Mark Grove, then at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. A Frey-type audible pulse was transmitted every time the voice waveform passed down through the zero axes, a technique easily duplicated by ham radio operators who build their own equipment. The sensation is reported as a buzzing, clicking, or hissing which seems to originate within or just behind the head. The phenomenon occurs with carrier densities as low as microwatts per square centimeter, with carrier frequencies in the 0.3 to 3 gigahertz range. By proper choice of pulse characteristics, intelligent speech may be created. Dr. James Lynn of Wayne State University has written a book entitled Microwave Auditory Effects and Applications. It explores the possible mechanisms for the phenomenon and discusses possibilities for the deaf as persons with certain types of hearing loss can still hear pulsed microwaves, as tones or clicks and buzzes if words aren't modulated on. Lynn mentions the Sharp Grove experiments and comments, the capability of communicating directly with humans by pulse microwaves is obviously not limited to the field of therapeutic medicine. Synthetic telepathy. In 1975, researcher A.W. Guy stated that one of the most widely observed and accepted biologic effects of low average power electromagnetic energy is the auditory sensation evoked in man when exposed to pulse microwaves. He concluded that at the frequencies where the auditory effect can be easily detected, microwaves penetrate deep into the tissues of the head, causing rapid thermal expansion at the microscopic level only, and that produces strains in the brain tissue. An acoustic stress wave is then conducted through the skull to the cochlea, and from there it proceeds in the same manner as in conventional hearing. It is obvious that receiverless radio has not been adequately publicized or explained because of national security concerns. Today, the ability to remotely transmit microwave voices inside a target's head is known inside the Pentagon as synthetic telepathy. According to Dr. Robert Becker, synthetic telepathy has applications in covert operations designed to drive a target crazy with voices or deliver undetected instructions to a programmed assassin. This technology may have contributed to the deaths of 25 defense scientists variously employed by Marconi Underwater and Defense Systems, ESMs, and GEC. Most of the scientists worked on highly sensitive electronic warfare programs for NATO, including the Strategic Defense Initiative. It is claimed that directed energy weapons might have been used to literally drive these men to suicide and 291 fatal accidents. Now, on Project Camelot in the archives, there is this story of that, and now we have the explanation of why they found brilliant people committing suicide in very bizarre ways, and one lady even tied herself to a chair, handcuffed herself, and hip-hopped the chair 290 yards to the lake and fell face forward into the lake. Quite a feat. The significance of embryonic holography now becomes more understandable. For example, the specific frequency bands of 0.3 to 3 hertz, that should be gigahertz, are so flat as to appear almost two-dimensional to most biological processes on a semi-quantum mechanical level. That means that these frequencies can be seen as scalar in their possible interaction with specific brain processes. What these frequencies really are, however, are actual holograms of specific thoughts. They have a third component of detail, much like the patented P through 100 wave. This means that a hybrid form of brain fingerprinting is now possible. And once these images are stored, usually in a very sophisticated, supercool computer, similar responses can be fed back to the person, inducing virtually any state desired via entrainment protocols. Silent sound technology. Silent, or converted to voice FM hypnosis, can be transmitted using a voice frequency modulator to generate the voice. It is a steady tone near the high end of the hearing range, 15,000 hertz, plus a hypnotist voice varying from 300 to 4,000 hertz. These two signals are frequency modulated, which means combined. One rides on the other and interferes with the carrier wave. Then the output now appears as a steady tone, like tinnitus, which is that high-frequency squeal that you hear in your ears, and people tell you it's nothing. The output now appears as a steady tone like tinnitus, but with hypnosis embedded. The FM voice controls the timing of the transmitter's pulse. Each vertical line is one short pulse of microwave signal at a frequency to which the human brain is sensitive. Timing of each microwave pulse is controlled each downslope crossing of the voice wave. That's a note here, Sharp's method, 1974. Then the brain converts the train of microwave pulses back to an audible voice. There is no conscious defense possible against this form of hypnosis. Ordinary radio and TV signals use a smooth waveform called a sine wave, which looks like an S. It's very like this. I can't do what I had. It's up, down, up again. Like wave. This wave signal cannot normally penetrate the voltage gradient across the nerve cell walls. Radar signals consist of very short and powerful pulses of sine wave type signals and can penetrate the steep voltage gradient across the nerve cell. The difference in osmosis of ions dissolved in salt components causes small voltage difference across cell walls. When a small voltage appears across a very tiny distance, the change in voltage is called very steep. It is the steep gradient that keeps normal radio signals from throwing us into convulsions. The mind-altering mechanism is based on a subliminal carrier technology, the silent sound spread spectrum, or SSSS, sometimes called S-quad or SQUAD. It was developed by Dr. Oliver Lowry of Norcross, Georgia, and is described in U.S. Patent number 5,159,703, Silent Subliminal Presentation System, dated October 27, 1992. The abstract for the patent reads, a silent communication system in which non-aural carriers in the very low or very high audio frequency range, or in the adjacent ultrasonic frequency spectrum are amplitude or frequency modulated with the desired intelligence and propagated acoustically or vibrationally for the inducement into the brain, typically through the use of loudspeakers, earphones, or piezoelectric transducers. The modulated carrier may be transmitted directly in real time or may be conveniently recorded and stored on mechanical, magnetic, or optical media for delayed or repeated transmission to the listener. According to literature by Silent Sounds Incorporated, it is now possible, using supercomputers, to analyze human emotional EEG patterns and replicate them, then store these emotion signature clusters on another computer, and at will silently induce and change the emotional state in a human being. Edward Tilton, president of Silent Sounds Incorporated, says this about S-Squad in a letter dated December 13, 1996. All schematics, however, have been classified by the U.S. government, and we are not allowed to reveal the exact details. We make tapes and CDs for the German government, even the former Soviet Union countries, all with the permission of the U.S. State Department, of course. The system was used throughout Operation Desert Storm in Iraq quite successfully. Induced alpha to theta biofeedback cluster management is an output from the world's most versatile and most sensitive electroencephalograph, EEG machine. This device has a gain capability of 200,000 compared to most other EEG machines with a gain capability of 50,000. It is software driven by the fastest computers using a noise nulling technology similar to that used by nuclear submarines for detecting small objects underwater at extreme range. The purpose of all this high technology is to plot and display a moving cluster of periodic brainwave signals. The illustration shows an EEG display from a single individual taken of left and right hemispheres simultaneously. This technology is very similar to that used to generate P300 waves. I don't know what those are. We should all look that up. Cloning emotions. By using these computer-enhanced EEGs, scientists can identify and isolate the brain's low-amplitude emotion signature clusters, synthesize them, and store them on another computer. In other words, by studying the subtle characteristic brainwave patterns that occur when a subject experiences a particular emotion, scientists have been able to identify the concomitant brainwave pattern and can now duplicate it. These clusters are then placed in the silent sound trademark carrier frequencies and will silently trigger the occurrence of the same basic emotion in another human being. Regarding system delivery and applications, there is a lot more involved here than a simple subliminal sound system. There are numerous patented technologies that can be piggybacked individually or collectively onto a carrier frequency to elicit all kinds of effects. And this is what I expect people will be dealing with during the event. There are numerous patented technologies that can be piggybacked individually or collectively onto a carrier frequency to elicit all kinds of effects. It's wonderful how they say things like that. Biological amplification using microwave band frequencies. The next major development in ELF weaponry was the concept of a biological amplification of these signals at the cell level to perpetuate and set up resonance for more sophisticated information transfer. This was the beginning of using more than one technology in a stack to do something, quote, more. While this was implied, it was never developed in the book, The Holographic Concept of Reality. Electromagnetic fields or relatively weak power levels must be of, it's a misprint, relatively weak power levels can affect intercellular communication. Bioamplification is apparently why radio signals of very low average power, microwatts, can produce audio effects and is difficult to detect. Imposed weak low-frequency fields and radio frequency fields that are many orders of magnitude weaker in the pericellular fluid, that is the fluid between the adjacent cells, than the membrane potential gradient, which is the voltage across the membrane, can modulate the action of hormones, antibody, neurotransmitter, and cancer-promoting molecules at their cell surface receptor sites. These extremely low frequency sensitivities appear to involve non-equilibrium and highly cooperative processes that mediate a major amplification of initial weak triggers associated with the binding of these molecules, specific cell surface receptor sites. Membrane amplification is inherent in this transmembrane signaling sequence. Initial stimuli associated with weak perpendicular electromagnetic fields and with binding of stimulating molecules at their membrane receptor site elicit a highly cooperative modification of calcium ion binding to glycoproteins along the membrane. Enzymes are protein molecules that function as catalysts, initiating and enhancing chemical reactions that would not otherwise occur at tissue temperatures. This ability resides in the pattern of electrical charges on the electrical surface. Activation of these enzymes and the reactions in which they participate involve energies millions of times greater than in the cell surface, triggering events initiated by the electromagnetic fields, emphasizing the membrane amplification inherent in this transmembrane signaling process. Frey and Messenger confirmed that a microwave pulse with a slow rise time was ineffectual in producing an auditory response. Only if the rise time is short, resulting in effect in a square wave, with respect to the leading edge of the envelope of radiated radio frequency energy, does the audio response occur. This is why we don't hear ordinary radio and TV signals. There appear to be two methods of delivery with the system. One is direct microwave induction into the brain of the subject, limited to short-range operations. The other, as described above, utilizes ordinary radio and television carrier frequencies. Far from necessarily being used as a weapon against a person, the system does have limitless positive applications. However, the fact that the sounds are subliminal make them virtually undetectable and possibly dangerous to the general public. In more conventional use, the silent sound subliminal system might utilize voice commands, for example, as an adjunct to security systems. Beneath the musical broadcasts that you hear in stores and shopping malls may be a hidden message that exhorts against shoplifting. And while the voice commands alone are powerful, when the subliminal presentation system carries cloned emotional signatures, the result is overwhelming. Free market uses for this technology are the common self-help tapes, positive affirmation, relaxation, and meditation tapes, as well as methods to increase learning capabilities. But there is strong evidence that this technology is being developed toward global mind control. The secrecy involved in the development of the electromagnetic mind-altering technology reflects the tremendous power that is inherent in it. To put it bluntly, whoever controls this technology can control the minds of men, all men. There is evidence that the U.S. government has plans to extend the range of this technology to envelop all peoples, all countries. This can be accomplished and is being accomplished by utilizing the nearly completed HARP project for overseas areas and the Gwen network now in place in the U.S. The U.S. government denies all this. Dr. Michael Persinger is a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Laurentian University, Ontario, Canada. His work and findings indicate that strong electromagnetic fields can and will affect a person's brain. Temporal lobe stimulation can evoke the feeling of a presence, disorientation, and perceptual irregularities. It can activate images stored in the subject's memory, including nightmares and monsters that are normally suppressed. Well, there's a movie called Blade Runner, if you've seen that, or if you haven't seen it, you should see it. People make movies like that not to entertain you, but to warn you. And this takes place, I think, in San Francisco or Los Angeles. The movie's due date is kind of supposed to happen sometime in the future, like 2012 or something like that. Most attention is on the artificial humans that are in the movie, but all through the movie there are voices from floating barges spilling propaganda down into the streets about going off into the off-world colonies and be happy and take drugs. That is what the world is going to be like if these people get their way. And in conclusion, I had to stop and get a drink of water. Alan Yu, a former lieutenant colonel in the Taiwan National Defense Department, says that the United States has not only developed an operational mind control machine, but has also distributed models for use by allied countries. Yu states that such machines pose a great threat to human rights and the American way of life. He calls the device the mind-reading machine. Yu writes that there are two sources of information detailing the existence of the mind-reading machine. The first evidence, in the 1970s, the South China Morning Post reported that the University of Maryland had invented a thought-reading machine. The original purpose of this machine was to help authorities investigate severe car accidents. It was to be used on people who were severely injured to get their accounts of how the accidents occurred. In the spring of 1984, Yu was a lieutenant colonel serving in the National Defense Department of Taiwan. At that time, Yu read a classified document from the department that he serviced under. The document said the Military Police Department of Taiwan had purchased several of the mind-reading machines from the United States. In Taiwan, it was called Psychological Language Machine. The document was a request to the United States for parts to repair several malfunctioning machines. The machine allegedly uses microwaves to deliver spoken messages directly to the human brain, as well as using radio waves to hypnotize people or change their thoughts. Yu reports that before he left, this machine had become the most effective weapon for the Security Department of Taiwan. In 1993, Defense News announced that the Russian government was discussing with American counterparts the transfer of technical information and equipment known as acoustic psychocorrection. The Russians claimed that this device involves the transmission of specific commands via static or white noise bands into the human subconscious without upsetting other intellectual functions. Demonstrations of this equipment have shown encouraging results after exposure of less than 1 minute and have produced the ability to alter behavior on unwilling subjects. A U.S. Department of Defense medical engineer claimed in 1989 that the U.S. and Israel had regularly used microwaves to condition and control the minds of Palestinians. That's about a third of this small book called Synthetic Telepathy. The next third is a fleshing out of how many technologies there are, and there's about 20 of them. And the last third is references to books and papers on mind control, and that's a third of the book is referencing other works on this. So it is a reality, and I would be very suspicious of the television for sure. I think it's pretty obvious that most of the West sits on the couch glued to what they think is entertainment for 4 or 5 hours a night. And the main complaint I hear from people is life is no fun anymore. And there may be some connection. This is the thing we have to watch out for, because the world could be taken over without a shot this way. And the planet which rules this one, that's what it's like there. They have total mental control of the population. And it's no fun at all. And it will be no fun at all here. So, are you going to sit on your duff and allow this to happen to you again. Is that okay? Didn't say anything I shouldn't? Yeah, okay. Okay, that's it.